Hey, 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 everybody. It's Thursday, and you know what that means? That's right, it's episode 67 of the Real Deal Pod with Allister and Geoff. I am Allister Carrington, your trusted realtor, and as always, we've got our main man and our main mortgage lender, our guru, Geoff Lee, with us again. Whew, it's a cool Thursday afternoon today, but man, we needed it after the heat that we've been going through. Geoff, my man, how you doing? What's going on?
Yeah, the last couple of days have just been stifling.
Right?
So it's actually nice that it's cooled down. I actually turned on the heat in my house today. I had the
That's how
air
I
had the air conditioning blasting and I'm like, oh, it's cold. I got to turn on the heat.
that's what I this morning. So I had, for the last few days, I'd sleep with the windows open,
Yeah.
right? I woke up this morning and I'm like, oh my God, I'm in Winnipeg in the middle of winter. It's freezing in this house. What is going on? But boy, we need it because those massive fires and those poor people out there. This is, I mean, I don't know how much it's going to do, but it's going to do something. So we've needed it. We've needed it. But how's your week been, man?
Yeah, you know what? My week has been good. I had my sisters from Calgary and their families over last week, and then
Yeah.
as we may remember, had some great friends over, on the long weekend. So I had people pretty much in my house for the last almost 2 weeks. And I'll be honest, it's nice to have a little bit of more elbow room in here and a little more freedom, as they would say.
As my daughter would say, your social battery has expired, Geoff. You need to recharge your social battery.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to go again. It only takes a small recharge and then I'm up and at it again. So I'm ready on
So
for the next come.
that's awesome. That's what so my daughter, whenever I head into the office just to kind of chill out and relax and stuff like that, like Michelle, she'll go like, "Where's Dad?" And he's like, "He's recharging his social battery. He's exhausted."
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
Right? Yeah, man. Yeah, same. It's been good for me. Had a nice weekend with the family. Got out and did some showings, picked up a few new clients, closing my listing today, got another closing coming up. It's been busy, but been good. Lots of great chats lately, actually. Seems a lot of people have been, again, interested in what's going on in the market, but a little bit more interest in moving forward as opposed to just having the conversation on what the market is. It's more so of what the market looks like for them and how do we move forward. So that's great signs, of hopefully great signs for everybody else moving forward. But good
Well,
discussions. Yeah.
like I said, like we've always said, real estate can be a little bit of a roller coaster ride, but if you take a look at what it has always done in the history of time, is it will always come back. It's
Right.
just a matter of when is that time going to be? So
Yeah.
it's just a
And
matter of
it's
time. So
no, it's true, and a lot of it too, I believe, has to do with mindset. I was talking to a colleague of mine, and a lot of it, I believe, has to do with the mindset of the agent as well. So if we're sitting here and constantly talking about doom and gloom, oh yes, rates haven't gone down, da 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 da, oh rates may be close or mortgage payments may be close to rents, but then when you have to factor in X, Y, and Z, is it really worth it? Blah, 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 right? Then, yeah, a lot of the times I say to agents, yeah, you're not going to be busy because you're literally telling your people not to buy, which is actually doing a disservice um, to your clients. And it harkens back to another client of mine, shout out to, or client, colleague of mine, shout out to Andrew Bracewell. It was last year, right when the rates were super high, right? And we were all having the discussion about what the conversations we're having with clients. And there was one colleague of ours that were saying, like, I can't tell my clients that they should be buying right now. The rates are so high. Da, 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 da. Why would I tell my clients that they should buy? And we were saying, you know what? In all honesty, you're doing your clients a disservice right now, because now is a good time for them to buy. Why would you tell them that it's a good time to buy when the market is overactive, prices are shooting through the roof, and affordability becomes a lot harder? That's
Yeah.
actually doing more a disservice to your client than explaining to them that affordability is actually more in line right now, and right now is a better time for you to buy. And so, fast forward a year from now, we're still kind of stuck in that same rut that I feel with some realtors out there, that they just, they're having a hard time grasping that selling during COVID wasn't actually selling, right? We were basically a clerk, right? We were a Kmart, Walmart clerk checking out homes, right? Just saying, okay, we'll write you an offer. There you go, and sending it forward. As opposed to now, where our job really truly is education and explaining to people, this is good for you to be doing right now. And here's the reasons why. If you can afford to, right? If affordability is in line, this is why it's important for you to do so. And then we tail it, and then we circle it right back around to, what is your net worth going to look like once you make this transaction, and how is this going to benefit you in the future? So that's really, I think, a lot of my busyness comes from just this sort of conversations that I've been having, maybe versus others. But yeah.
Well, even to your point is I've been reading a lot is what you think is what you get. So
Yes.
if you think that you're in a slow market, if you think that now is not a time to buy, if you think that things are going to get better in a period of time, that's really what you're going to project.
Exactly.
And a lot of times and let's be honest, there's a lot of people in both of our industries that are extremely busy right now, right? And it's
Yep.
because their mindset is different. It's they're not taking the excuses, and they're not basically living in that bucket. They are finding other ways to move forward. And there's, again, there's lots of realtors and lots of mortgage brokers out there that will complain about the time and the market that we're in. But there's many that are very, very busy right now too. And what's the
Yeah.
difference? It's their mindset.
100%. It's all mindset. It's all how you come across. It's all the tonality and the sound of what your conversation looks like with your clients. So to everybody out there, to all mortgage lenders, to all agents that listen to our pod, just think about those conversations. Think about how you sound, right? If whatever you believe, you're going to educate your clients with that, right? Not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's whatever you believe is what you're going to be educating your clients with. So just be careful.
Yeah. And also being able to knock down roadblocks when they're put up, and knowing how to navigate through them. I was having a discussion with a gentleman today about his mortgage renewal and affordability. And his current provider was saying, "Hey, we can do X for you." And I'm like, "Well, here's what we can do for you." And he's like, "Oh, well, what is that dollar difference?" And he was on weekly payments. And I'm like, "Oh, it's about $23 a payment." He's like, "I don't know if that's going to make a big enough difference for me to make a change." I'm like, "Okay, well, so here's the roadblock. Okay, well, $23 doesn't seem to be a lot, but when you do the math over a term of 3 years that you're looking at a savings of $4,500." And he's like, "Well, I don't know if that's, worth it." And I'm like, "Well, if I was to say to you, let me give you some money so you and your partner can go on a trip to Mexico, would it be worth it?" He's like, "Yeah, you're right. Let's do it." So, right?
No, that's exactly it. Yes. That's a beautiful example. Absolutely. Because yes, a lot of the times people get lost on a small number. And then when they get that other number, they want to still justify why they were right on that smaller number. But like I've always said too, like if somebody was to take away 45, if somebody was just to take away $4,500 from you, would you be happy about that?
No.
Probably not. If somebody was to give you $4,500, would you be happy about that? Probably. Right. And then it's like, yeah, you're right. Why am I thinking that way? That's nuts.
Yeah, and even back to your point of mindset, I think as far as within our industries, it's really understanding that their mindset is not really right in that sandbox of productivity. So they're also stuck in that quicksand.
Yeah.
And it's our responsibility to paint them a picture that they understand to say, you know what, this is actually a good thing for you to do, right? This is actually what you need to do. I'm working with another client, and honestly, restructuring their debt, Alistair, is going to put up to $2,500 in these folks' pocket each and every month, pay off their consumer proposal, pay off, like I think they have close to $100,000 of consumer debt. And in doing this restructure, we are literally just reshuffling things. The debt load is the same. It's just basically where it's all going to be coming from and the overall interest that they're going to be paying. And they're going to save $2,500 a month. But the lady is just like, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have all my debts here. And I'm like, well, do you realize debt is debt? No matter where you're putting it, it is debt.
It's
So it
still
doesn't
there.
matter if it's spread out in all these different places, or we can restructure it and put it into one place. But at the end of the day, do you want $2,500 coming into your pocket each and every month? Well, yes, but you know, she has these roadblocks, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, I don't know how better that we can communicate this to you, but you know what? At the end of the day, if you don't want to save the money because you don't want your debts to be combined and you like them separate, then unfortunately now you have a you problem.
Right. That's amazing. You're being offered an extra paycheck. Like, in all honesty, that's essentially what you're being offered is an additional paycheck every month,
Yeah. Well,
right? Well,
you
depending on what you make, but
it's a
it's,
$30,000 savings in a year,
right.
right?
That's what I'm saying.
You roll that into a 3-year term, that's 90,000
90 grand.
saving. But you don't want to do it because you don't want to take this one debt here and put it in here because now you have a bigger mortgage. Like
Yeah.
it's just,
It's some people, yeah, and some people you can lead them to water, but you can't make them drink,
yes.
right? That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Amazing, my man. Well, let's kick it because we got some great stuff today. And as always, we are going to start off with the hottest segment in podcast right now, and that is
Did you know?
That's right. Did you know? So, Geoff, did you know since 1981, Canadian real estate prices have grown almost 7 times faster than wages? Yep, 7. I want you to let that sink in. So, Stats Canada crunched the numbers, and from 1981 to 2024, here's what they found. The median real hourly wage for full-time workers, so that's people working 30 plus hours a week, only went up 24% over the past 43 years.
Yeah.
So that works out to about 0.5% a year.
Yeah.
And if you're part-time, you barely saw a bump, just 6% in over 4 decades.
Yeah. Yeah.
So here's right. So now here's the kicker. In that same period, inflation adjusted home prices skyrocketed 163.5%.
Yeah.
Even with the market cooling recently, home values have still pulled away from wages like a Ferrari leaving a bicycle in the dust. So
Yeah.
what does that mean? For a lot of older homeowners, their property values have grown faster than their paychecks ever did. So now a huge part of their wealth, of course, is tied up in home equity. Meanwhile, younger Canadians and recent immigrants are running a rat race where the finish line keeps moving and it's not even getting closer.
Mhm.
So here's the big question. If the next generation can't afford to buy in, how are current owners supposed to cash out these big gains? So you can tap into your equity, of course, for a while, but eventually someone's got to buy the house. So, Geoff, that's why I want to discuss this. What's your take on this gap? Is this a market correction waiting to happen, or are we now just locked into this new reality?
Well, I think if you take a look at the statistic, it's a 40-year statistic, correct?
Right. Yeah.
And to be honest, it doesn't surprise me if you take a look at the cost of living versus versus the index as far as the return on investment of property ownership, doesn't really surprise me at all. And no, I don't think this is a recipe for market correction. This has been happening for 40 years. Is all of a sudden things going to change? People could have said the same thing 30 years ago and 20 years ago. But I don't know. I don't think the market is going to correct. I think the market is going to continue to rise. I don't think we're going to we may see some dips, but is it going to crash? Has it ever crashed?
Well, I will never say crash. Market will never crash. We say this all the time, and I don't like that word. It will expand and contract. That's what I always say. The market will expand and it will contract, but it will never break, right? That bubble will never break. And the reason being, it's always built on the ingenuity of us Canadians, right? That's why it will never, that's why whenever somebody says it's got to crash, the bubble has to break, it'll never break. It'll always contract. I think the thing that I found, I don't like to say the word alarming because it's a harsh word, right? I just think of if that is in the case over 40 years where we only see a 24% increase, then what does that mean in the next 40 years? Does that mean it's going to be a 300 does that mean it's going to be a 400% increase above only a 40%, 48% increase in wages? Because what that just says to me is we're going to continually increase the gap so far from ownership. And I know, and I think I mentioned this on the pod like way far back, but there is the thought that in the next 25 years, that only the wealthy of the wealthy, so the top 5%, will own a single detached home, right? And that is, I think, where this kind of falls in line, is if the home prices keep outpacing wages, we're going to end up in a spot where 95% of the people will not be able to afford a single family home. And I think therein lies an issue, right? So that's where I don't think we're going to have a crash, right? I don't think, and we're not, and again, where I always say it, we're not getting back down to where single family homes are worth, $683,000 the way everybody wants them to, the way CMHC says it needs to get driven. That's the reason why we're creating these new categories. It's in order to kind of balance it out as a whole, right? But I think the pressing question though is it fair that only 5% of the population will be able to afford a single family home, and 95% will have to deal with that being out of touch?
You're looking into a crystal ball though, because
No,
that's what
of course.
that's what you're projecting. The reality.
I'm not projecting that. I'm just reading stats that are projected. That's what they're projecting. I just wonder, like, is that a case? And if so, right, if that does happen, is that fair? Or should we be taking a look at that, right, being a little bit more cautious about it and start putting things in place, guardrails in place to guard against that, right? Do we need to start thinking about it? And I spoke about this last pod, remember, where I didn't even want to move here, right? Because my wages weren't increasing, right? And so my beautiful life in Manitoba, where I afforded a beautiful home and I was able to travel, eat out, do all of those great things. When I moved to BC, all of that money got put into a home and a lot of that got limited, right? And where I said that, CEOs, BC was seeing a challenge of bringing in CEOs, top level CEOs from other provinces, because they were saying you'd have to triple my wage, which is not feasible, right? From a company perspective, if a CEO is getting paid at minimum $600,000 a year, that's not bonuses. To triple that CEO's wage to $1.8 million as a base salary is not going to happen, right? So now you're not attracting top level talent. And then the other report that we saw, 70,000 people leave British Columbia, for 77% of those people being under 40, because housing affordability and wages are top of issue, right? So this is where I say, do we need to put guardrails in place, right? Because that becomes a massive factor, right? That means you lose talent. You can't keep talent, right? And then what do you have left to run your country, your province? How does your province continue to progress at the same rate? Or as I always say, if I'm living in a province, I want to be better than the other provinces. No offense to them. I hope they want to be better than us as well, right? But how do we continue to make British Columbia the top province if we can't keep people here?
Yeah. And I think
And
you have to, I think as a province, you have to recognize what's being focused on. Number one, what is the problem? Number two, confirm that it is actually a problem, right? And we're not just on some TMZ kind of news channel
sure.
and just verbalizing. And then, like anything that you do, you have to be consistent in proactive behavior, right? So, does that mean you're going to change things drastically? Absolutely not. We see what happens when that does happen.
Well, and
But
that's what we said last
I'm
week.
I'm almost going to compare it to weight loss, right?
Hmm.
Like if you want to lose weight, and there's there's a couple different ways that you can do it, but the best way to get healthy is to be consistent in what you do. And that could take a long period of time versus, popping these fat like these fat burners or whatever it is. And there's tons of people that do it that way. But
Hmm.
again, when you do the drastic changes, basically you're going to see immediate results, but you're not going to see long-term healthy results. And I think the same thing goes on with an economy, is that you need to recognize what the problem is. You need to confirm what that problem is. And then you need to be consistent in how to deal with that problem and have a long-term solution versus a short-term solution. And let's be honest, we take a look at what our government has been doing, for the last 8 years, and there's a lot of knee-jerk solutions to problems that just haven't worked out. In fact, it's gotten worse, right?
Well, for sure. And I've discussed that before just with my political background. And the reason for that is that politicians run on a term of 4 years.
Yeah.
So it's impossible to put something long term in there, because if your party doesn't make it through the next election, there's guaranteed that the other party is not going to continue to put the things that they have in place. They've got better things to do. It's like trying to build a house. Yeah, it's like trying to build a house and like build a house and firing your builder every single month or every single year, and getting somebody else to continue to do the work. You're going to have a shoddy, disjointed home because everybody's got a vision on what it should look like.
Or this one, it's like going to a counselor when you have a problem. You're not liking what you hear, so you're switching your counselor every third session. You just don't go
Exactly.
to her because
Right.
you're not willing to basically recognize what needs to be done, right? You're not
Right.
hearing what you want to hear.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, that being said, if we're running in a 4-year political cycle, is this problem ever going to go away?
Well, and that's the thing, and that's where I say it's unfair to sort of put it on governments, right? Knowing that it really is unfair, because by nature, in putting these guardrails for parties and for governments in place of 4 years, it makes it by nature everything you have to do reactionary, without being able to put forethought and future thought into what this plan is going to look like, right? So that's where.
And to be honest with you, Allister, it's not just a provincial thing. It's not just
No,
a municipality thing. It's not just a
it's
federal
federal.
thing. It's not necessarily even a world political thing. Like everything has to be working together in order for
Yes,
it to work, right? So
100%.
I think we need to recognize that as like, hey, and we've talked about it. This is what's going on within municipality. Hey,
Mhm.
this is what is going on provincially. Hey, this is what's going on federally. Hey, this is what's going on outside of our borders. But the reality of it is that we need these all working together to create a solution.
And I think that's the key point, Geoff. That's the point that I've been saying over the past few months is we've gotten to a place in the world where everything's divisive, right? Like everything is divisive. People, parties, everything. Right, provinces don't want to work together. So we talked about a few pods ago how difficult it was to transport our own goods made here in Canada across provinces, and that it was cheaper for us to export it to other countries than it is for us to utilize here. And then we saw only four provinces agree to remove those barriers of interprovincial trade. Only four of them, right?
Yeah.
BC, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Ontario. Only four.
And that was actually well, again, on paper, that was the fix, right?
Right. That was the fix, and only four agreed. Right.
Well,
just showing
proves my point.
yeah, just showing the divisiveness, I beg your pardon, within our provinces. So that's where I was going to get back to. Everybody needs to get rid of their ego some way, somehow. And it's not just provinces or sorry, municipality, provincial, and federal government. We also need them to join or to allow the private sector to have their input into what goes on, because the private sector has more of a pulse on what's going on. I'm sorry for any government official I'm offending right now, right? But the private sector right now has a better understanding, has a better pulse on what's going on than you do, right? So we need to, the governments need to get off of their high horse of we're gonna fix it by ourselves, and who cares what the private sector has to say, because they've made way too much money off of this and blah 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 blah, right? If this really does have to be corrected, everybody has to get on board, and it's not just a housing perspective.
Yeah.
It's also a wages perspective as well, right? That all has to get discussed in totality. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing.
No argument from me. I agree.
Right on. I think that's the first time. No, Geoff, we agree all the time. So that's a beauty thing. That's what makes this pod so easy. But yeah.
Well, not all the time.
Not all the time. But I would like to say though, we do it the right way, where we can disagree and agree at the same time, because both of us, if we do disagree on something, it's the same. We agree to the same outcome. It may just be that we differ on the way to get there. And that's the thing. That's what goes back to needing to happen, is everybody needs to have the same goal. You can disagree on how to get there, because a lot of the times when people disagree on how to get to a certain spot, the middle way that they've come to agreement on is actually the best way to achieve the fix. And that's why it's so important to include all voices in making a decision, because that's how you truly, truly fix a problem, right? Yeah. But amazing, Geoff. Well, what do you got for us, man?
Yeah, I almost forgot what I got. I wanted to talk about variable rate mortgages and how payments work if you're in a static variable rate mortgage or if you're in an adjustable variable rate mortgage, and circle back to two words that we were hearing a lot of within the last, about 18 months ago, called the trigger rate.
Right.
Right?
Yes. Oh, and you know what? One thing I noticed, Geoff, for the first time in quite some time, we've been seeing variable rates being lower than the fixed.
Yes.
Yeah, which is something great to see, because of course, for everybody that's had a variable mortgage, we have not seen that in quite some time.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing too, is what I wanted to talk about is when people are deciding on mortgage products, people are going to have a very negative thought about variable rate mortgages because of what has happened, in the past, with it raising like 8 times in a matter of, 10 months, maybe it was even 11. There was a lot of people in variable rate mortgage that really just kind of took it. Remember, prime rate in its day was at 2.45%, and then in that rise, it rose up to 7.2%. So there was a huge payment shock for people, and like any kind of traumatic event, people remember the ugliness of it, but they don't actually quite remember, the good part of variable rates, and statistically again that they've outperformed fixed rates. And again, we're becoming in a rate environment where they're very, very competitive to a fixed rate once again. But I also wanted to talk about the nastiness of it when it was in its heyday, when we were hearing those two words, trigger rates, and what that means, because we are having conversations with our clients, and this is a conversation that we're always having to have because people just don't quite understand it to its full capacity. So
Yeah, I'd
so
agree with
this
that.
this was kind of an education point where I was like, you know what? People are talking about these trigger rates, which we're not really in that zone anymore. That was really, really big, probably up to 12 months ago when our prime rate was at that 7.2 mark, right?
Right.
We were hearing a lot about the trigger rates. And again, it seems like we're still having those conversations when people are talking about variable rates, because again, that was at the time a very valid thing that was going on. That at the time was a very pointed part of a discussion. And again, we always remember the bad stuff. So I wanted to say,
So
guys, like, let's talk about what is a trigger rate. Let's talk about, variable rate mortgages. Let's talk about, if you are in a variable rate, are you in a static payment, which stays the same from, the day one to the end of the term? Are you in an adjustable payment, which floats with whatever the variable or whatever the prime rate is doing? But again, go on, Alistair.
no, yeah, I was just going to ask a question. Is this because is this motivated kind of through what people are hearing in the media, as I like to call clickbait topics, like that the media wants just to get people up in arms about and get people scared of and stuff like that? Is that why you're hearing more about having to explain more about trigger rates and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think we're coming back into this again because people are, again, like people are always, should I do a fixed or should I do a variable?
Yeah.
Right. And then when you have the conversations of variable rates, then they're asking about, well, what is this trigger rate or that I've heard about, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a lot of uneducation in it, and there's a lot of points that people really need to understand. And again, it was just like I always tell people, Alistair, is like if you can take one thing away from anything that you're in, be it a sermon, be it at a podcast, be it at a seminar, if you can just take one thing away for the time that you're there, you're that much better than you were before you entered the door, before you turned it on, kind of idea.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So again, like what is a trigger rate,
Yeah,
right?
what is it?
A trigger rate pretty much is when your mortgage payment no longer covers the principal of the mortgage. It is all going now towards the interest, right? And as this happens, that's called the trigger point. And as soon as all your mortgage payment is going towards the interest and none of it is going towards the principal, now you've hit the trigger rate as far as banks are going to be now knocking on your door saying, hey, we need to bring things back in line. And
Okay.
the other important thing to understand is that if you are in an adjustable variable rate mortgage, which really means in simple language that as the prime rate goes up or as the prime rate goes down, so does your mortgage in that timing. It's live.
Yeah.
Where a static variable rate mortgage payment, and anybody say that's with Toronto Dominion, that's in a variable rate, you are in a static variable rate, which means the payment that you did from day one where you signed the contract is going to be no different from year five, um, regardless of what the prime rate is doing, moving it up or moving it down, your prime rate or your mortgage payment is going to remain the same. Unlike an adjustable variable rate mortgage, and I'll just use Scotia as an example. If you are in a variable rate mortgage, say with Scotia, your payment has fluctuated up and down every time that, not every time, as per Bank of Canada, meaning if there is an adjustment with the overnight lending rate at that point. So trigger rates only are a conversation if you are in a variable rate mortgage that has a static payment, which really means it stays the same regardless of what the prime rate is doing with each and every Bank of Canada announcement.
Okay. Okay. So quick question. I was just gonna ask, like, how would somebody know that they're hitting the trigger rate or they're close to it or whatnot?
A lot of times they don't even know, Allister, right?
That's crazy.
They're not knowing until they're getting a phone call from their lender and saying, you know what, Mr. Carrington, prime rate has gone up. Your mortgage payment has remained the same. We are now in a situation where your mortgage payment is going towards all the interest and nothing is going towards the principal. We need to do one of two things here. We need to either increase your mortgage payment to bring that back into line. You either need to make a prepayment to bring your amortization back in line. You may need to do both. So how do you want to move forward, Mr. Carrington?
That's a terrible call.
Right, because again, most people don't know. Most people
Yeah.
believe that they are in an adjustable variable rate mortgage payment well, actually, I shouldn't say that. How do you know? Is if your payment stays the same regardless of what the Bank of Canada announcements are in regards to overnight lending rates. If
Right.
your payment has remained the same and you've been in your mortgage for the last 3 years, you're probably in a static variable rate mortgage. But again, if you've had that mortgage for 3 years, you probably have come very, very close, if not hit that trigger rate, in the heyday or in when the prime rate was at its all-time high. You may have already got that phone call, right?
Hmm.
Now, again, that's that payment shock when you do get that phone call. And when you are in that adjustable variable rate mortgage, again, yes, you're still having that payment shock. And remember, the Bank of Canada has how many meetings a year? Is it eight meetings a year?
Eight to 10, somewhere around there, between 8 and 10,
So
right?
like in the time when our variable rate increased or our prime rate increased 8 times in a matter, I believe it was 10 months. If you were in an adjustable variable rate mortgage, your payment increased 10 times in a year, right?
That's
So
crazy.
you
Yeah.
were suffering that payment shock all along. Static variable rate mortgage holders, where that payment remained the same, you weren't feeling it until you actually got that phone call from your lender and saying, you know what, we are now here at the trigger rate, and now this is what we need to do. How do you
Right.
want to move forward?
It's 8, by the way. Eight
Yeah.
BOC meetings a year. Yeah. I thought so, but I just couldn't remember if when me having a variable rate mortgage back in the day and just hearing it constantly going up, I just was like, okay, this happens every month.
Well, it feel
It felt like it.
it felt like it because everybody was really living in fear in those days,
Yeah.
and now we're still feeling like that because everybody wants to know what the Bank of Canada is going to do with rates, and
Yeah.
again, and we talk about this every time we talk about variable rates and Bank of Canada meetings, like, to keep it really simple, if you're waiting for a Bank of Canada meeting announcement, but you're going to choose a fixed rate, you don't need to wait because
Yeah, it
these
doesn't
Bank
matter.
of Canada meetings affect variable rate mortgage holders primarily,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
I think that was one thing, just sorry, just to, not to interrupt, but I think that that's the one part that the public didn't really grasp, right? Especially with all the noise and the chaos that biz
yeah,
was spit out by the media, like, oh my goodness, rates are going up, da, 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 da. Everybody just kind of thought everybody's rate was skyrocketing and everybody was in this place of perceived doom and gloom and stuff like that, and didn't realize that no, if you were fixed, you're fine, right? It
yeah,
it doesn't matter to you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so again, like what can you do if this happens, or what happens if you've hit that trigger rate? And again, I really want to stress that trigger rates really are not, we're not in the environment of a trigger rate right now, right?
Right.
But we are in the environment of people talking about trigger rates, either that they've gone through it, they know someone that's gone through it, or they've just heard it through media outlets of some sort, right?
Right.
So again, and we talked about this, like what has happened when people have hit the trigger rate. And remember, a trigger rate means that your mortgage payment now is going all towards the interest. None is going towards the principal. You are getting that phone call from the lender now saying, hey, we need to bring things back in line. And that lender is going to say, we need you to increase your monthly payment. We need to either do a lump sum payment to bring all the amortization back where it needs to be, and or both. How do you want to move forward? And that's the scary conversation, and that's the clickbait, right?
Yeah.
The stories
Yeah.
behind it.
Yes. Yeah.
So again, folks, like how do you protect yourself if that is you, or how would you protect yourself moving forward? Know what, no, number one, know if you're in a static or an adjustable variable rate mortgage, right?
It's 2 p.m.
Know exactly what
Hope you're
your
having a good
trigger
day.
rate is,
Wanna
and
go
by
for a
just
walk?
contacting your lender when that time happens. Not very many of us do this, but utilize prepayment privileges even in the now when there is not that conversation of trigger rate. Because again, remember, when you do prepayment privileges, all that money goes towards the principal,
Yeah.
none of that goes towards the interest. And again, that decreases the amortization. So again, if people were doing that, they weren't hitting the trigger rate, or if they were very unlikely to have a trigger rate conversation. And again, I think the statistic is less than, I think 90% of people utilize their prepayment privileges, right?
Which is crazy. I think that that is, if you can afford to do so, and I'm telling people you can afford to do it, just set it and forget it.
Yeah.
It's such an important thing to do. It's crazy.
Well, to be honest with you, Alistair, most people who do mortgages, that's what they do. They set it and then they
Yeah.
forget it. Like they
Yeah.
don't really think about it until, we have these conversations or these huge, huge rate inflections in the variable rate. But most fixed rate people, in that time wasn't impacting them. They weren't even
Right.
thinking about it outside of what was going on with media outlets.
Yeah.
But if you are in a variable rate mortgage, again, understand that this can happen. Understand what the trigger rate is. Understand if your variable rate mortgage payment is static, which means it just stays the same regardless of what the prime rate is doing, or it's adjustable, right? And if it's adjustable, you're not having a trigger rate conversation because your payments are moving with what the Bank of Canada is doing, right?
Yeah.
But again, also remember is that if you are in a variable rate mortgage, you can switch to a fixed rate at any given time with no penalty, right? And again, we've talked about this as well before. Make sure that you have a budget. Make sure that you factor in what can happen. Make sure, again, you should have 3 to 6 months of savings as an emergency fund. But again, we've talked about this before. Out of 10 people, who do you think really even has a budget, right?
Yeah. It's 1 out of 10. I'm going to say it's 10%. One out of every 10 people will do that. The other nine, no. And it could even be half a percent. It could be even half a person, right? Yeah.
So the key is again, really what I want to do with this pod is just have a good piece of education about what a trigger rate is. Have a good piece of education as far as who is affected by that trigger rate conversation. What kind of, if you are in a variable rate, are you in that static payment, or are you in that adjustable payment? And really utilize your prepayment privileges, not only for variable rate mortgage holders, but for everybody. And to your point, Alistair, very few people actually utilize their prepayment privileges.
Yeah.
But all you got to do is just set it, and it might hurt for 3 months,
Right.
but then you get used to it and then you forget about it.
Exactly.
And I'm the first to say is that, you know what, it took some conversations for me to actually phone up my financial institution and say, hey, you know what? Number one, I believe this is what my maximum prepayment privilege is. Confirm. Number two, can you actually set this up and so I can start doing that? Number three, it did hurt and it because I felt the pinch, but now you don't even think about it. And now again, I'm that much further ahead with my amortization pay down. I'm that much further ahead in my equity growth. But again, it's not making a huge impact on my month to month thing is because I budgeted for it. I'm now used to it. And yes, I'm actually in a variable rate mortgage, but mine's adjustable. So when we were going through that, you know, through that storm, I was moving with it, unlike others where they were in a stack, they were just even keel. But again, once they get that phone call, not a very good phone call to say, hey, Allister, you know, you need to come up with $12,000 to bring everything back in line. How
And
do
what
you
does
come
that,
up with?
yeah, what does that penalty look like, right? If you can't, like, let's say I don't have $12,000 to give you, now what?
Yeah, I think you know, again, depending on the size of your mortgage, and again, it's not necessarily a penalty, right?
Okay,
It's basically just bringing that principal and interest back in line.
back in
You're
line.
not creating a negative amortization.
Right. But
So
if you can't pay, then you've got a penalty, don't you? Like if
if
you
you
don't
can't
have that
pay,
money?
if you can't pay, what lenders will do is what I've seen is that they'll say, okay, Mr. Carrington, this is what we need from you. You're going to need to figure this out somehow, some way. But in the meantime, we're going to set you up with an interest only payment for a small period of time until you can figure this out. But, you know, at the end of the day, we need to bring this back to where it needs to be,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And again, knock on wood, I haven't had a conversation with anybody to this point where they can't pay. But you know what? There are many conversations out there, whereas we had to sell our house. We couldn't come up with the money. Or we had to now refinance our house, and hopefully there was equity in there to basically bring things back into line and reset amortizations.
Right.
Um, so again, I think every the answer to that question is different for everybody.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, maybe it for some is you had to sell. Maybe for others you had to remortgage. Maybe for others, you know, you had to beg, borrow, and steal it from somewhere. But at the
Right.
end of the day, that the answer to that question is different for everybody, and it's really largely based on what size is the mortgage, right? How
Yeah.
much do you need? Because the bigger the mortgage, the more you're going to have to come up with. And
Yeah.
also, how is your budget? Because
Yeah.
again, nobody likes that big surprise. But if that surprise is to happen, again, if you have a 3 to 6 month emergency fund, it's going to hurt like hell, but you're going to be able to figure it out.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, so when I say set it and forget it, and like you said, it does hurt for a while. But here's the thing, human nature is no matter what, we spend to what we make. That
Yeah.
is honest to God truth. That is what people do, right? You will even talk to people that have quit smoking. I quit smoking, right? I smoked for years, right? People would think, oh, right?
$20 a
I
pack.
have saved. I have saved, but that's because I made it intentional, right? Most people that quit smoking, they'll say like, it'll be like, oh, think about all the money I'm going to save off not smoking. I'll be able to do this, that, and the other. After a while, they'll be like, I don't see any difference. Like, I still feel like I'm paycheck to paycheck. Da, 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 da. I don't feel like I've saved any money. And it's like, no, you've just spent that money elsewhere, no offense, stupidly, right? Right. And you're just spending to what you have,
Yep.
right? So just set yourself with, if you make, let's say you make $4,000 a month, right? Tell yourself you make $3,000 a month, and that's how you live, right? And then you will see you will have those savings, right? But if you
And
don't set it and forget it, if you just, you'll continue to spend to what you make.
to your point, know your weakness.
Yeah,
My weakness is if I see money in my bank account, I will spend it.
that's it.
So what I do is I actually put money into, I see it in my bank account, but I put it into another account where it's not online. I don't see it, so I
Mhm.
don't spend it. And
Right.
I will always, in my active bank account, I will always have a very low balance because I'm continually shifting that money out of that account where I can see it every day to an account that I don't look at all. But that's my weakness. I know my weakness. So if you know your weakness, what do you do to turn it, to make it a strength?
100%, Jeff. You make me laugh because we're the same way. So I have seven.
Oh,
I have
wow.
seven. Yeah, I have seven other accounts that when I get paid, a certain amount goes into my real estate, certain amount goes into my charity fund, certain amount goes into my like vacation fund, all of that sort of stuff. I have seven different funds, seven different accounts, and then my main account, which is the one that I see all the time, is the one where I pay myself.
Yeah.
So that's all the money I got. Right. And that's where it's set it and forget it. So sometimes I look at myself and I'm like, Allister, you're broke. Not just joking, but Allister, you need to make more money, right? But it's because everything else is put away, right? And so where I'm fine, right? But from what you see is I don't spend outside of that account that I see.
And to even add it one step further, have these accounts pre-authorized debited on a certain day. So you don't even
Yeah,
have to do it. It's just doing
true.
it itself, right?
Yeah, true. That's a good idea. I haven't actually done that when I transfer all the stuff myself, but that's actually a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's it.
amazing.
That's all I got, my man.
That's awesome, buddy. This is a pretty good pod. We've learned that wages have or housing prices, of course, have outpaced wages by 120 some odd percent, considering 163.5% for homes, and people's wages only went up by 43%. So that's about 127% outpacing. We've learned to
Proves the point of one of your best investments is your house.
is your house. That's exactly it. Will never stop. Now, the appreciation, they're going to try to slow it down now, but it's still one of the best investments that you can make. Right. And then we've learned what? We've learned that the trigger rates, and we've also learned on how a little bit of fiscal responsibility. That's a lot that I think we've given everybody today.
Jam-packed it.
Jam packed, baby, jam packed. That's why I say Geoff and I have made the commitment to double down on making sure that you guys have got as much valuable information as you can possibly get every pod. So, everybody, thank you so much again for sitting here and listening and taking the time to listen to us. Continue to like, love, share us. Please leave your comments on any topics that you want us to have. Again, we want to make sure we are delivering you guys as much valuable content as we possibly can. We are so excited to have you back next week for episode 68.
Wow.
But in the meantime, have an amazing weekend. And most importantly, stay empowered, stay informed, and Geoff,
Stay tuned.
that's right, baby. Stay tuned. Peace out.